Hey, it's so good to see you all here this evening. Thank you for coming out on a weeknight. Yeah, there we go. We should do like a wave, you know. Start over here, wave, and woo! All right. Hey, that almost makes us feel normal again, right? So, all right. Well, come on up, panelists, friends of mine. I want to introduce you guys to the audience here. Come on in. Yeah, grab a seat and position yourself so you're not looking too much into the sun tonight. And if people want to tune into their radios, JJ, what radio station is it? 90.1 will get you on the radio tonight. So Colleen, Robert, Ashley, Jay, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's just a privilege to have you here with us as you help us as a church wrestle through really, this new environment that we're in, which is not so new, but it's new to us. Okay, can we just say that? And so what I want to do is I just want to give you guys a chance to get to know who we're playing with in the sandbox tonight, okay? So why don't you guys, Colleen, we'll start with you, and then we'll work over here. So just say who you are, a little bit about yourself, maybe why you're here tonight.
Yeah, so my name is Colleen Moran. I'm actually Mike's sister-in-law. I'm married to his twin. And I'm the director of one of the James Place ministries that happens to be right in the 4th floor of Washington High School. So I started as a volunteer there in 2013. First time I went, I said, I'm absolutely never coming back here. This is not the place for me. And I'll tell you more about that later. But I'm so glad to be here tonight because I just have such a passion for the kids there, for what's going on in Milwaukee, and I really want to spread the word for what we can do.
Robert?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Larry. I am a worship leader and a youth leader with primarily through the Brick System churches. Most notably through Eastbrook Church, where I did a residency and an internship, and I've been on and off staff there as a worship coordinator and whatnot. I recently wrote an article for the Milwaukee Declaration that Mike ended up seeing and thought it was particularly powerful, and as a result, he asked me to come and share some thoughts with you this evening. So, very happy to be here.
And occasionally you'll see Robert carving it up on stage with a saxophone. Do we have you come and play drums too? Yeah. Drums, saxophone, sing?
Yeah, I'm very good friends with with Elmbrook's music director, Chris Geiser, and so I've been particularly this summer, I've been doing a lot of guest worship leading on saxophone and drums, and I haven't sung here yet, but I guess that's to come later, right?
Yeah, exactly. So great.
So.
Awesome. Good evening. My name is Ashley Thomas, and I am the executive director of Hope Street, greenhouse for people on 26th and Capitol. I am around Elmbrook. I attend here, and actually started here after college. Came and did an internship here, actually at the James Place that Colleen now runs. So, yeah, I'm here because Mike asked me to be here, and I'm ready and willing to be a learner and a listener as much as a sharer.
And Ashley gave a message at Northbrook Church. What month was that? Last November?
Yes, I think so.
Last November. Worth looking up on the Northbrook website for sure. Very challenging. And Jay.
My name is Jay English, and I am the founder and the CEO of Plain English, where we look to serve as a bridge between what we see as suburban white America and the urban and inner cities. I've been serving in the inner city and urban environments for about 20 years. And part of what we do is facilitate these type of conversations. We facilitate redemptive conversations around race, culture, and economics, looking to bring people together. So glad to be here. Mike threatened to beat me up if I didn't show up tonight, so I didn't want to have that type of fire in my life, so I decided to come on out and stay out of trouble.
Great. So we're going to have some fun tonight, I can see already. So my first question for all of you is primarily for you three. So describe your experiences growing up as an African American in America, and how perhaps have your experiences been different than most of us here tonight, especially sitting out in the audience.
Oh man, I gotta go. They made me go first. We want to be a gentleman. Go, ladies first. All right, here we go. So I guess for starters, as I share, I think for all of us, I won't speak for everybody, but I think just knowing that these are our experiences, and so I don't want to speak on behalf of like all African Americans or all biracial people, which I am biracial. So my mother is white and my father is black. And so growing up for me was different depending on who I was around. I spent a lot of my younger years just really trying to fit in. So my family lived in Minnesota until I was in 8th grade. And in Minnesota, in the places where we were, it was all white, and being biracial was really weird. I stood out. People wanted to touch my hair. They had weird questions. And at the time, you don't think much of it as a kid because you're just kind of like, all right, whatever. Yep, I'm different, but not. And for me, the thing was always not fitting in on either side. So for my black family members, I wasn't black enough because we lived in the suburbs and I didn't sound like them, or I maybe wasn't doing some of the things they're doing, or I wasn't eating some of the same foods. And for the white kids, or my white family, I didn't look like them either. And they didn't really understand all of the ins and outs that made myself and my siblings who we were, as well as who my father is. And so it was hard. I think for the most part, I honestly just kind of went through life and did what I needed to do to fit in and get by. It really wasn't until I came to Milwaukee where I was really actually faced with this, who am I? Because I was continually asked, what are you? And at first I would be really offended by that question because I was like, what do you mean, what am I? I'm a human being. And eventually understanding that people were asking, like, what race are you? Like, what makes you you? And for a while I didn't know necessarily how to answer that question. And to be honest with you, like, I'm continually answering that. I'm continually wrestling with that myself and just embracing all of the cultures that make me who I am. And so, like, there's not really a great answer for that. And I know that maybe is, like, really confusing to some people. But for me, I think it's important to just remember that, like, I'm made in God's likeness and image. I reflect him in a unique way, just like each and every single one of you reflects him in a unique way. And so instead of trying to fit in and be like, okay, I'm black, just black, or I'm white, I'm just white, no, I'm both, and in that, I reflect him in some way. And so I want to do that in a way that honors and glorifies him.
Jay has a, I just call it a 90-minute prophetic monologue on Facebook that answers this question. But Jay, I'm wondering if you can go into some of that.
Sure. So growing up, obviously there was differences. I went to a predominantly white school from kindergarten all the way through my senior year in high school. And again, you don't know, because as your kid, you're being asked questions that you don't understand why people are asking. I was typically colored with a black crayon when we had those times, hey, color somebody next to you, whatever. And, you know, I made mention of that when we first got together of, I know I'm not black. Why are you using a black crayon? You know, well, that's your color. Or people walking up and saying, hey, does this rub off, or you're dirty? Being asked, you know, again, can I touch your hair? What is it like living in the ghetto? Grow up being asked, you know, have you ever been in a gang? And I'm one of the least likely members of a gang you will ever find. But being asked those type of questions, you know, I played sports. I loved soccer. I loved basketball. How I was treated on the field, how I was treated by other opponents, names I was called. So we're talking about some of the differences, some of the things that maybe other people don't have to deal with. I've been called out of my name a few times. I mentioned to you before, I've been pulled over for stealing my own vehicle. I constantly fit the description of somebody that's being searched for. Typically, black male, 5'6" to 6 foot, bald head,
Jay,
with clothes on.
so you told the story of being at a public beach,
Yes.
and can you just retell that story? That's a powerful
Sure.
story.
So I graduated college. I did everything that society told me this is what you do to not have problems. Moved to an affluent area. I had a great job. I got my first condo. I was really proud of myself till I found out what an association fee was. That changed how I felt about it a little bit. But there was this great lake area over where I lived, and I would go over there and hang out where there was a parking lot for like a post office or whatever, and I would just park in the back, walk over to the lake and hang out over there. Well, one day I went, parked the car, left, remembered that I left my phone in the car, so I came back to get it, went back to the lake, and I was over there maybe 15 minutes, and a police officer walked up, and she made a beeline towards me, and I was like, I've done nothing. That's always my first response. I know I've done nothing. I've literally stood here for 15 minutes and looked at water. She came up to me, asked me my name, had some small talk, and I just told her, now I know you're not here to just have some small talk. What's going on? And she said, I received a phone call, and they reported a suspicious person in the area was walking through parking lots and looking in vehicles, and you fit the description. And I told her, yes, that suspicious figure was me, because I was out there. It had to be 60 people at the lake, and I was the only black one, so I knew I had to be the suspicious one. And I told her I absolutely did park in that parking lot. I absolutely did walk and look back into my car to get my phone out. And then I did just like everyone else here. I walked back to this lake, and you received a phone call. And I asked her, so what do you need me to do? And she said, I'm going to need you to leave. And I was like, well, this is public property. Like, I'm at the lake. Are you serious? I have to leave? And she said, we received a phone call, and, I have to at least ask you. I have to ask you to leave. I don't want there to be any problems. Well, I don't want there to be any problems either. The number one thing that my mother taught me was make it home. The end. That's what you're always taught. Whatever you got to say, whatever you got to do, whatever compromise you need to make it, say it, do it. You can file a report later, but just make it home. So, I wasn't happy. I let her know I really wasn't happy about it. I said, you know exactly what this is.
So
right?
you could have escalated the situation if you wanted to.
I mean, yeah, I could have, but
it's
I
just
could
not
also,
worth it.
I could also end up face down on the pavement with my hands cuffed behind my back for standing at a lake. So I have to make a decision. Is my personal pride worth the outcome that could happen to me? Man, the lake is not worth it. So for me, I was hurt, I was angry, I was upset, and I made sure she knew that. I don't appreciate how I'm being treated. I'm out here just like everyone else is. And I got in my car and went home.
So, Robert, when you hear that story, does that resonate with you and what you've experienced?
Yeah, it certainly rings a couple bells, and it reminds me of two instances specifically, both occurring when I was actually in high school. Now, as some of you may know, I'm a saxophone player. I'm a professional player, and I started in grade school, and so I was really blessed with an amazing opportunity to be part of a nationally competing youth ensemble. And so I remember, I think I was either a sophomore or maybe a junior, and we were performing somewhere, and I'm blanking on the town, but it was a Wisconsin suburb. It was about an hour and a half away, and we were the first ones there. Now, I am the only black person in the group, and they gave us a specific parking pass. They gave us specific instructions on how to get into the facility, how to get into the building. And so, so here we are. I was much smaller at the time. I'm like maybe 5'3" with a giant saxophone strapped to my back. So there's like really no ambiguity as to what I should be doing there. And as I'm attempting to enter the building, someone there would not let me in. They would not let me in, and they were. It was just something, you could tell that there was something beyond the desire to keep the building secure. And you could tell that there was some type of, this lady had already kind of decided from the time that she saw me that I was someone that shouldn't be in that building. And I remember for about 15 to 20 minutes kind of arguing with her, going back and forth, explaining multiple times, I'm in the band, I'm here to play, I'm here to, I'm supposed to be here, I have a pass, I have everything I need to have, and I still don't have access. And it wasn't until 2 of my bandmates showed up who happened to be white. And they vouched for me and said, he's in our band. He's one of our saxophone players. He's supposed to be here. For 20 minutes, I said the exact same thing that they did. For 20 minutes, I was denied access to something that, and I went out of my way. I went 90 minutes out to play at this thing, and that's what I was presented with. And so, I don't really think it resonated with me at the time, but later on, it started to really sink in, because she never specifically said it, but she was nervous because I was black. And that's just the reality of it. The second scenario that I'm thinking of is so I'm from Milwaukee. Went through the Milwaukee Public Schools district, and Milwaukee happens to be a pretty segregated city. I mean, I remember even as children, like one of the things that we would do, it was just a game to us, but we would point out the buildings or the landmarks or whatever it was that separated, the neighborhoods from where black people lived and where white people lived. And even as kids, it was that blatant and apparent that, that we would notice it. And so, being an MPS, I always remembered being surrounded by other kids that looked like me, that acted, kind of like me, that we all spoke the same way. It wasn't until I was in high school. I went to Rufus King, and I remember it was the basketball playoffs, and we were playing another school in West Dallas to try to get to the WIA tournament. And so it was a Wisconsin winter, so it was very, very cold. And after the game, I remember waiting for my dad to pick me up. And so I go into like this little corner store, a little side store, and the clerk is there, and I ask him, "Hey, I'm here for the game. It's very, very cold. If I buy like a pack of gum or something, can I just like wait in here until my dad arrives?" He said, "Sure, yeah, no problem with it." So I buy my gum, and I'm waiting, and then this clerk leaves, and someone else comes down, and this person, he asked me, "What are you doing here? Why are you in here? You don't belong in here." And then eventually, as my dad arrived, as I was leaving, I heard her say, "Get out," and called me out my name. And I remember that stuck with me to the point where like I did not return to West Dallas until I was probably in college. That's how impactful it was. And so I think it's really startling, and it's a stark reminder that these things are not, these are not ancient historical events, but these are things that we see and that are very much alive in the hearts and minds of a lot of people. And like even today, this is a type of ignorance and attitudes that certain people will choose to uptake.
So I want to ask one follow-up question, then Colleen, I'll get to you. How does it make you feel when people say things like, "That must all be in your head," or "You're making that up," or "If you could just dress less threateningly"? How do those kind of comments make you feel?
I mean, I feel like they're stupid. That's how I feel. People say those type of things, and it's because you either have never been in relationship, like real relationship, because when you actually care about people and you get to know them, you believe some of the stuff. We're not all lying, and that's my number one response. Everybody is not all lying. Number two, you can go anywhere and get on Facebook, Google, YouTube, anywhere you want to go now. Technology has caught up, and there's a number of incidents that you can visually look at yourself and see that was wrong. So when people try to say, well, maybe it's something you did, or maybe it's like, well, number one, you don't know me, because if you did, you would know I'm not even that type of person. Number two, I would assume you don't have very many authentic relationships with people outside of your own culture, or you would probably hear and know a very different story.
I was reminded of a story that a friend of mine told me that they were going on vacation, and this is in Waukesha, and they asked their neighbor, who's an African American, that, hey, if any packages come from Amazon, can you please just grab them off of our porch while we're gone? And the neighbor was like, absolutely not. I am not going to do that. I'm an African American, and I'm not taking packages off of your porch. And those are things that I just have to admit I don't have to deal with. And I'm sorry that you do, but
it's honestly, it's like you want to be. I'm a black man that lives around predominantly Caucasian people. Yeah. I want to be a good neighbor, but I have to be careful how I even get to be that. Yeah. My neighborhood, people from next door will take your garbage out to the end of the street. We'll shut your garage door if it's open. Like, we do that, but I have to be honest. My neighbor left his garage door open for 2 days, and by the second day, I was like, something's wrong. And I said, the Christian part of me wants to just go in and close the door, yeah. But the smart part of me says, let me go over here and call him first. Yeah. Yeah. Because what I don't want to do is have someone call the police and say someone's in the house robbing it, stealing something out of the garage, any of a number of things. And it can just go really bad really quickly. So no, I don't get the same freedoms everyone else has.
Did you want to add to that, Robert?
Yeah, and you were you're asking me, how does that make you feel? Angry. You feel really, really angry. It's there are a lot of moments that you really have to. Now, looking at this from a biblical perspective and from a Christian perspective, there are a lot of moments where you really have to go back to the throne of God and to the foot of the cross and just ask Him to help you, one, forgive, and two, and understand, but three, how to move forward. But what we're dealing with here is these are different forms of abuse. Now, if someone if your child comes home from school and they say, a bully beat me up, broke my nose, broke my jaw, you're not going to ask them, okay, well, what did you do to the bully? What did you, you must have done something to provoke this. No, this is, I have been abused. Something bad has happened to me. Instead of figuring out what I did wrong, let's try to figure out how to prevent this in the future. That's that in any form of an abusive relationship, trying to figure out what the victim did, that's really kind of missing the point.
So, Colleen, you have found yourself in a position where you have earned the trust and respect of certain members of the African American community. I know, just being your brother-in-law, that this has not happened overnight. It's been a journey and a process for you. So can you kind of unpack that for us, and what does that look like for you?
I'd really be happy to, Mike. I'm so glad already that this is going on here tonight. I'll start by saying one of the women that works at Washington High School, she would be considered the mama of the school. I can hardly ever speak to her because she's always got like 6 to 7 kids in a circle around her at all times. She's just, everybody loves her. So she came into Washington High School, into James Place, right before the quarantine, and sat down and said, I'm irritated, I just want to talk to you. And she's
Colleen, I'm gonna
Can-
move your chair over here because you're getting feedback. So we're gonna put you right here.
okay.
Then you're not getting feedback from that speaker.
Why don't you-
All right. So she said, I'm irritated. Can I talk with you? And I said, sure. And she said, well, I just was at this Myers in the area. She said, it's my store. It's an event. I know everybody there. Everyone knows me. And she said, I went shopping there yesterday, and I actually had been there last week and bought a really cute shawl and wore the shawl into Myers. And within 2 minutes, I'm pulled aside by 2 officers and the manager, put it aside room, show us your receipt, ma'am. They thought she had stolen it right then and there that day. And she kept saying, you didn't check your front door cameras yet, did you? No, we don't need to do that. No. So she walked me through exactly what she needed to do, where she needed to place her hands on the table, how she needed to speak. And they did watch the videos after a very long time, saw that she had the shawl on when she got out of the car, no apology, and just was given a small little coupon to the store, which she said, are you serious? I've loved this store. I'm never coming back here. And she said, Colleen, I'm not the type that's going to do the big ranting Facebook post. But I was heartbroken, and I'll tell you how I got to that heartbroken place. And if anything, to be honest, I wasn't really more heartbroken, as just really angry. And I just said, what can I do? You are an amazing woman you don't need me, white lady, speaking for you. And she said, actually, Colleen, that's where you're wrong. And she said, out in your community, I need you. I need you to tell my story, because if I tell it behind a microphone, no one's really probably going to believe me, or they'll think there's a better reason of why I was pulled into a side room. So that's why I'm grateful to be here today. And I'll tell you where I am, been on this journey. I started just reading in the paper years ago. My goodness, Milwaukee. I grew up here in Brookfield. #1 homicides, #1 segregated, #1 infant death. And then the one that hit me the hardest was worst place in the nation to grow up if you're a black boy. And I really feel like that goes for girls too. So I have a son. I was a 3rd grade teacher for many years, and that really hit me hard. And I thought, here I sit out in Pewaukee. This is all going on, really kind of right down Capitol Drive. What am I doing? And so I found out about James Place in Washington High School. Ashley said, why don't you come down? Just kind of see what we're all about.
The Ashley who's sitting right next to you.
Right next to me. Wonderful Ashley. She was a director. So I grew up in a family where I have no memory of not one single word of anything racist, no put down whatsoever of anyone of color or anyone who's different. I got in my little green van and drove down Capitol Drive, turned on Sherman, and I'm thinking to myself, there's these Christians that just have, all these they make these racist comments. They're kind of putting down the black community. I do not understand that. I was very arrogant. I thought, kind of, what's the problem? I don't struggle with that at all. Of course, I had no black people in my life at all, but I was saying I didn't struggle with it. And I have to tell you, I pulled up in front of Washington High School, and to the second that I put my foot on the sidewalk in front of the school, thump, every TV show, every movie, every news story, everything I had ever seen that showed an African American in a negative light came up into my head, to the point I remember almost shaking my head and thinking, wait a second, where is this coming from? I'm a nice person. I don't, where is, oh my goodness. Because it was the first time I was put in proximity with somebody that didn't look like me, in proximity with the black community. And I'm so embarrassed to say that as I was walking up the stairs outside the school, there was a young man sitting there minding his own business. Can you all guess what I did immediately? Grabbed my purse as tight as I could, because of course he's going to take it from me. Walked into the school, didn't make eye contact with anybody. There was police there. I'm going through metal detectors, and I'm already saying, oh, this is not going to happen. Walked into James Place, and right away I felt that Grand Canyon that I thought was between me and the students there. I felt like there is so much that's so different about us. There's so much to jump over, to even know how to say 2 words to them. And I saw tattoos and hair and outfits, and I couldn't understand anyone. And I thought, how am I going to get out of this? Because I'm going to see Ashley at church, and I need to think of kind of a nice Christian-sounding excuse, or I'll be super embarrassed. And I said, Lord, I have said yes to you to many things in my life. This is going to be the big N-O, because it's not happening. And I feel like an idiot. So I walked up to Ashley, and I just said, hey, Ash, I really just feel like this is not a good fit for me. I'm a white, middle-aged woman from the suburbs. Of course, it was all about me. These kids aren't going to want anything to do with me. And Ashley, if you know her, in her own sweet way, she looked me dead in the face, and she said, Colleen, all they really want is somebody to be their friend and care for them consistently. Do you think you can do that? I thought, oh, I love people. I love friends. I think I can. And as it was, she said, well, good, because that boy over there, he needs your help. So as I'm walking over, she turns and kind of says another comment, and she looks at me and says, oh, and Colleen, just so you know, it's always a little bit awkward. And that was the most freeing moment for me. I thought, if you're saying it's awkward has been my middle name my entire life. I'm embrace awkward. I'm all about awkward. And so I sat down next to this young man, and my first thought was, I've never been this close to a black person. And he was working on an application, and I thought, I want to do more than just help him get to Walmart and work there. What do I say? And I just prayed, and the Lord said, ask him about his tattoo. I'm like, okay, that's weird. So he had an RIP on his arm, which is very common, and I said, who is this? What does this mean? And he went to explain it to me, and it was not a good story about how a family member had died. And so we just connected a little bit, and the bell rang, and he stood up and looked at me, and he said, hey, do you think you could be here tomorrow? And I kind of did this like, oh, are you talking to me? And that was a connection that the Lord used. I thought, he doesn't even know me, but I just showed that I cared a little bit. This Grand Canyon of, I'm a white lady, you're a black teen from the city, how can we ever connect? That slowly started to shrink. So I ended up staying, coming 2 days a week to volunteer, asking Ashley every stupid question I could think of, which she patiently answered, eventually became the director. And just as I'm working with kids, I remember one of the first days I was director, one of the girls came in and said, well, hey, I took the ACT test, and I was one of the only black kids there. And when your pencil broke, you could go up and ask the proctor for a pencil, and they'd quickly give you a new one so you could quickly sit back down because it's a timed test. And she said, my pencil broke, and I went up to get a pencil, and the proctor made me stand to the side for 10 minutes. Well, all the testing time went by, most of it. And she's telling me this, and my first thought, honestly, I said to her, oh, that's too bad. And inside I'm thinking, okay, I can't even say this with a straight face. Inside I was thinking, it's 2014. Nobody's going to be that racist. That's where I started. And I can tell you more of the story later.
Thanks for sharing that. So, Ashley, you kind of mentored Colleen through this process, kind of mentor the rest of us. What role does relationships play, just seeing, based on your work there at Washington and James Place and now at Hope Street, what role does relationships play in the whole bridging that Grand Canyon?
I can talk loud, but I can't talk that loud. You hear me?
Whoa.
Okay. All right. So what role do relationships play in bridging that divide? I think the first thing is, and anytime I have a new volunteer or someone that wants to come down, is I just ask them if they're willing to be curious. Oftentimes and I say we because I came into the city and into Hope Street with the same preconceived notions of like, there's something I have and know that you need to know from me. And in reality, there is a lot that we need to know And there's a lot that people in the city already know, and they've made choices one way or the other. And so stepping into a situation where you're looking to build a relationship with someone that looks different than you is first asking yourself this question: who do I believe is the highest authority in their life? Do I think it's me because I'm successful, educated, etc., etc., etc.? Do I believe that it's our God, our Father? Or do I believe it's them? What does that look like? Am I willing to be curious about who the highest authority is in their life? And I say that because you can't build a relationship with somebody if you're walking into it saying it's one-sided. If I'm walking in and I'm saying I'm the highest authority and I know all of these things that you need in order to do well in life, that's a one-sided relationship. I don't know about you guys. I don't want somebody coming into a relationship with me where it's not a reciprocal thing, where we're both going to learn and be curious about one another. And so that first thing is be curious. And the second thing, I think that this has been a common thing recently where people, as just race has been spoken about, people can say, well, I have a black friend, or I have a black son, or I have a black whatever. I'm not racist. And I've been having a lot of conversations with my mom recently because my mom grew up in Madison, Minnesota, not Madison, Wisconsin, super small town, farm town. And we were just talking about race and just things that happened as a kid. And she said, I'm racist and I'm married to a black man. I'm racist and I have 4 half-black children. And that's a really hard thing to swallow. And she's saying, and I'm a good person, and my mom is a good person. But she's saying there's things, there's biases, there's prejudices, there's things I grew up to think, to believe, and to respond that have influenced the way that I react to people that are different than me. I know my husband, and so of course I'm not scared of him. But when I come down to visit you at Hope Street, and I walk outside of my car and there's a black man I don't know, I hold my purse tight. Or I think, I'm worried about my girls working down in that part of the city. And so those are the things that we can have that conversation because we're in relationship with one another. And so I think as we think about relationships and as you have people in your life that look different than you, is be curious, ask them about their experience, and be willing to listen, don't critique it. You can't critique it. It may not make sense to you. It may seem super dramatic or just not even possible. But that's how we begin to learn. And as you ask yourselves those things and you enter into that relationship, the prayer for yourself, and I pray this daily, is God, reveal in me the things that are not of you. And that's a scary prayer. And it probably will break your heart.
That's a dangerous prayer.
Yes, it's a scary and a dangerous, and it'll break your heart. Because even as a half African-American woman, I have biases and prejudices about black men. And I work in the city, and I work with black men all of the time. And there's still fears and things that were ingrained in me as a kid that was raised in the suburbs. And so just because we have those thoughts, racist thoughts, things that aren't healthy, things that aren't what God's asked us to think, doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I want to do something bad to somebody else, but it's just the reality. And so relationships can begin to break those things down, and you can begin to have those conversations where you can hear somebody and say, point out in me where I have responded to you in a way that's not how I would respond to somebody that maybe looks like me or comes from the same circles that I usually walk in.
Thanks so much. So, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd. When you guys hear stories like that, you have a different response than I do. How does that make you feel when you hear stuff like that?
For me personally, there's the thought that could have been me. That's initially the first response I have. How many times have I walked home from a store with some candy and something to drink, and I actually made it home, and Trayvon Martin did not? I look at Ahmaud Arbery. How many times have I gotten on a bicycle or going for a jog or going for a walk and I made it home and he didn't. So I think those are the realities. And there's some differences. There's some cultural differences that I think a lot of times we get mixed up in. A lot of times, specifically, let's say for African Americans, and I'm not speaking for all, but let's say the 80-20 principle. We're very familial as far as I'm getting all type of extra help here. I feel like I should be preaching a sermon right now. Like,
yeah, where's Gary Loop? And now a word from our sponsor.
right. I'll just hold on for a minute.
I'm just glad they're not coming to Elmbrook.
May God be there wherever they're going.
Amen. So a lot of people may not understand, and because again, and Ashley spoke to it, there's all these perceptions, specifically of African American culture, because if you're not in authentic relationship, all you know is what you've been exposed to through media, television, music. And I want to tell everybody here, what you see on the news does not represent like 98% of us. What you see in the movies does not represent like 98% of us. Most of us do not do that. We look at the people doing that stuff and be like, why are you doing that? But there's that perception. So for us, from a cultural standpoint, like, we're passionate. We are lovers of loyal people. Like, you don't even have to be technically family, but we'll call you family. You can become family just by being loyal, just by showing that you care, just by spending some time. You can become, Cousin Mike, just like he is right now. You can become that person. And it's really that easy. We see things that happen to other African Americans, and our first thing is that could have been me. How many times have I been doing that? That could be me next week. A lot of times we've already had suspect interactions that have let us know it really could have been us. I told you a couple of my stories earlier, so that's the first response. That could have been me. I could have been dead. All I want to do is get back home to my wife and my daughter. Man, when I watched the George Floyd situation, I couldn't even watch it. Like, I had to just turn the channel because there's no legit reason he shouldn't still be here. And to see someone do that to another human, to another person, regardless of whatever he may have or may not have done, and then to hear this grown man cry for his mother. And for many of us, mom is that safe place. Mom is the one person that I don't care what I done did or what done happened, mom gonna love me. You may call and you did some wrong and you don't want dad to answer. You want mom to pick up the phone. So in that moment, for him to call for his mom, who had already passed, there's a level of heartbreak. Your heart breaks in those moments. And that's what my feeling and my thought is. How can you treat another person in a way that, if I'm really honest, when people do animals like that, they go to jail. If I'm really honest, if people were to do their pet in that way, there would be all types of problems. But this was done to a person. So, that's my primary thought, and I think a lot of us feel that way, where you saw people even with Trayvon Martin wearing "I am Trayvon Martin." And people were upset, "No, you're not Trayvon." I could have been.
Robert, you're looking at getting married? Yeah. Having kids in this environment? Are you concerned for them?
I'm glad you brought that up because, I recently got engaged back in April of this year. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, baby girl. And so it's just like Pastor Jay was talking about. You think about yourself. I think I can't the amount of times I've been followed around in a department store or walking back somewhere and arouse someone's suspicion. But the first thing that came to my head were, and this is a direct result of recently getting engaged and looking at getting married and having children. The first thing I think of are the kids that I don't even have yet. How as a father do I instruct them on how to navigate? Because my wife is my fiance is also black, and so for us to have black kids and then raise them in raise them in environments that see black people as naturally threatening, as being a danger to them, as being something to fear. In a lot of these cases, people will state that they felt that their lives were in danger, where there's really no legitimate rhyme or reason as to why they would think that, except for the color of the person that they're looking at. And so my first thought is, how can I, as a father, how can I instruct, my future kids on how to avoid that, when in reality there's really nothing I can do as a dad. And that's the thing that's scary to me. The idea that someone will see my child and naturally be threatened, naturally be afraid, naturally fear their life because they're going to have my face. They're going to have my skin tone. They're going to have her skin tone. That will happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. I think that's the thing that scares me the most about that.
Can I share something? I think for me, this go around with George Floyd, I think with all of the different things that have come up, on some level I've avoided it because I haven't wanted to enter into the pain of it. And this time I was like, I have to watch this. I think I eventually was like, listening and hearing about this, and I was like, I'm going to watch this. And I wept, which if you know me, that's not that surprising. But I wept because for the first time, George had a face and a story and a name. As I listened to arguments that people were making in terms of his background, the fact that he was under the influence and, all of these different things about his background, suddenly for me it was, that's Chris Bowes, that's Mark Jacobs, those are members at Hope Street that I do life with every single day. Those are people I know who are trying to turn their lives around, who maybe on one bad day relapse and on the way home make a bad choice and get pulled over. Now, do I think that there should be a consequence for the choice that they've made? Absolutely. Do I want to think that it's going to cost them their life? No. And so I think until we're able to truly humanize some of these situations, it doesn't feel real and it won't matter. And as I watched this last situation, for me it was like, I can't wait until it's someone I know. Because when it gets to the point where it's somebody I know, I don't know how I'm going to respond. But I think we have to be willing to make it personal. Because if it's not, then it's just another statistic. It's just another person. It's just another black man. And that doesn't matter enough for us if we're honest. So what do we have to do for it to matter enough to us on how human beings, people created in God's likeness and image, are being treated? Yes, there are laws, there are rules, there are things we're called to abide by, and that's legit, right? And we're not condoning bad behavior, and you could come down to Hope Street and you could sit and talk to all the members at Hope Street and they'd say, yep, we're not okay with this bad behavior, this choice or that, but I want to know if I make a bad choice, I can make it home. That my life is not in danger.
I want to follow up with that too. It's really easy to write off someone that you don't know or that frankly you don't care about, and it's really easy to be disconnected from a person if they're presented as a statistic, right? I think that's just a natural inclination. But as Ashley was talking, the story of Lazarus came back in my head. And when he died, Jesus sat and he wept. Was it Martha? Mary? Jesus sat there and he wept. Now he knew, being God, he knew full well that he was about to raise him from the dead. He wasn't So, his heart broke simply because her heart broke. He knew something that she didn't. He knew that he was about to, death is of no consequence to Jesus. Hallelujah, it's not. But it's still, but even in that moment, in order to be God to her and be her personal God, he stopped and he put himself where she was, and he mourned with her and he wept with her. And so when I look at the idea of, drawing off of that example and drawing off of that same concept, anytime someone is killed unjustly, if we call ourselves reflections of God, if we call ourselves his people, then we ought to weep with them the same way that Christ did. Our hearts should break the same way that theirs does. I think it's Psalm 17:31. For the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves us who are crushed in spirit. It's not, I don't think it's glorifying to God to minimize someone's grief simply because we don't know them. If we call ourselves Christians, everyone should matter the same way, and everyone's life should impact us. Everyone's death should impact us the same way too, especially one that is inherently unjust.
Let's yeah, you guys can clap. Yeah. Let's just pretend for a moment that you get a chance to address the suburban white church. Just pretend, like at least representation of them. What would you say to them? What would you like to see happen? What scripture verses do you think that we might be guilty of just conveniently ignoring when we think about the kingdom of God? This is for any one of you.
I would say, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to those of you that are here and that are participating in the conversation. That's important. I've run into so many people that refuse to even have the conversation, refuse to even listen to these stories. So I commend you first and foremost for doing that. If I were speaking to the suburban church, I would say we need your help. We need you. We need you to speak and to tell these stories in the circles of influence that you have that we may never get an opportunity to walk in. We need you to challenge people who say the off-color comment, who make the racist joke, who say things that go against image bearers of God. We need you to challenge them. We need you to look at the things that God has blessed you to have in the areas where you have them, and to say, how can I use what God has blessed me with to make a difference? I appreciate Colleen and what she's doing at James Place. Are there places where you can go and put yourself in the minority? Because I promise you, it feels different. It's a very different experience. It's an experience that I'm used to. I've lived my entire life having to do. But I challenge the suburban church to do the same thing. Find places to go purposefully. Set up a coffee date with somebody that has a different culture than you and just hang out. Talk, laugh, ask them about their kids, find out about their favorite TV shows. I grew up doing some of that, and you might come to my house and there's certain movies and shows I watch. Anybody out here ever seen Coming to America? Anybody out here ever seen Harlem Nights? I got a couple of hands. I'm going to ask you a real hard one. Anybody out here ever see the movie Friday? Oh, gosh. I'm losing people here. But these are cultural movies that I may watch. But what I found out is that some of the culture that I had that I found funny with my friends, one of my friends introduced me to this wonderful sitcom called Friends. Anybody here ever watch Friends? Anybody here ever watch Seinfeld? You like Kramer? Yeah. Kramer is my guy. But I never would have known I would have liked Kramer if somebody hadn't have exposed me to him and told me about him. If I had never stepped outside of what was normal at my house, outside of what was normal for me. So that's really my encouragement.
You got to give us a list of some of those movies to Jake. He's somewhere on here. We're compiling a resource list for us.
You might not want to watch some of them movies, okay? I'm gonna tell you that right now. For all of you who have Christian ears, some of those you don't want to pay attention to.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find I was reading the room. But that would be my encouragement.
Sure.
Find people that don't look like you. Put yourself in situations where you can build real relationships, where we can do what we're doing right now. We're talking, we're laughing, we're sharing, we're exposing our real, true feelings. Even Colleen, I appreciate your experience of first showing up at the school. Those are real emotions. And then you meet somebody that has an RIP tattoo and you get into a conversation and you find out they have a real story. And that story can break your heart and make you see them as a person, as opposed to what society has taught all of us to view certain people as being.
And I'll vouch for Colleen. So we go to the same family gatherings, and when the banter goes around the family, Colleen is the one saying, "I'm sorry, that's not right," or "You don't work where I work," or you don't know the people that I know," and so. But if we're never there, we'll never develop that empathy. Yeah.
So I would just piggyback. Is this working? I would just piggyback on that. I would piggyback on that from what some of you have just mentioned up here. I really did go into James Place Ministry thinking I have this huge bridge to cross. Jesus, help me every day to cross over and make these relationships. And what surprised me very quickly is who was meeting me way on the other side of the bridge was all the kids and teachers at the school that I felt like I was so different from. I'm called Auntie within 3 weeks of being there. We're family. And so when you talk about seeing these young black men on the TV, that's every James Place boy that I know. That's the alumni that still come back to visit us after years and years. That's the young man that, with no promise of money or food, hauled a couch up 4 flights in a 100-degree school in the middle of July just because I texted him and asked him to. There's so much that we have, so many assumptions that are so wrong, so wrong about specifically black teenagers in Milwaukee. And we don't have the time, but I wish I could just tell the stories. One thing that's hard being white is I carry such really just an anger and sometimes don't know what to do with it. It just the injustice that's going on. Earlier this year, there was actually 3 people killed right outside our school. And the kids came up to James Place after one of them, and I thought they'd be very upset. They were upset about the killing. You know what they were mostly upset about? Oh, Miss Colleen, they didn't even handle the body bag the right way. You know what they're supposed to do? And I said, how many of you have seen a body be put in a body bag? Every hand. Well, when I was 5. Well, and so just as a white person entering into this, always feeling a little, how do I do this? Jesus, help me. I don't know what to do. Really hard conversations, really awkward, and just embracing that. And that's the beauty, like you were all saying, of just being together, being family, knowing each other. It's very different when someone knows your name and you know them. It changes everything. It changes everything. So if there's anything that anybody can do, like Jay said, there's lots of people of color out in Waukesha County. Just smile at someone, try to get to know them. It makes all the difference. Your life will be changed.
I just want to add something really quickly. Can we just love people? Like, can we just get to the end result?
Amen.
Jesus called us to love God and to love people. And we make this so hard. If I just say hi, if I just spend some time, if I just ask you how your day is, like, just love people. And if we were to do that, if we were to do exactly what Robert said, if we were to mourn with those that mourn and rejoice with those that rejoice, I promise you we would absolutely change this world. We really would. If we just loved people and did something as simple as what Jesus asked us to do.
I just wanted to quick add, we just have so much in common that we don't realize. Washington High School this year asked us to be a part of just making some wellness check phone calls. It happened to fall. We were supposed to check on how they were doing with the online learning, but then it was, pandemic also, and the riots. So I'm calling, hey, just want to check and see how you're doing. And yet within a second, I realized I'm a mom talking to another mom, and we're just chatting and we're connecting because we just have so much in common. And I love what Jay said. We just need to love and stop thinking that there's just so much that's different that's going to keep us apart.
Anybody else want to add to that? I'll give you the final word tonight.
I'm a nerd, so I like to learn, and so maybe some of you are that way too. I would say also, find ways to educate yourself. Don't go to your token black friends and ask them to solve all of your problems in this area. That may sound a little bit harsh, but for real, we're tired too, and we don't want to speak on behalf of the rest of us. So there are incredible books you can read. There are great podcasts you can listen to. Do your part to educate yourself and to begin to see, what is it that I believe? What is it that I'm curious about? What have I not learned yet? Whatever that is. And you can enter into those conversations then afterwards with your friends. That's totally fine, and we're more than willing to do that. But don't put the pressure and the onus on then black people to help figure out in you what you're struggling with, right? Because that's, each of us has to do that. That's a gut check, that's a heart check. That's going back to that question in the beginning that I said to ask God, what parts in me don't reflect you? Please reveal it. And as you do, reveal to me those people that you'll have walk with me in grace and truth and love.
Jay, I want to ask you to tell us a little bit about Kneel for 9. That's coming up this Saturday afternoon. This is something that you began about a month ago. Tell us about it and what we can do.
Sure. So Kneel for 9 was a campaign my wife and I actually started in our basement. I was distraught after the George Floyd death and looking for something to do that would bring people together. I was seeing a lot of things happening. Milwaukee, kind of went up, and there was things happening in cities all over the U.S., obviously Minneapolis, and I wanted to do something as well. So what we came up with was kneeling for 9 minutes. Those 9 minutes referred back to the 9 minutes that the officer kneeled on George Floyd. And what we wanted to invite people to do was to just come together in groups or by themselves, wherever they were. It didn't matter if you wanted to do it in your yard or if you wanted to get together with 150 people at a park somewhere, and just to kneel down collectively. We all decided on a certain time, and I think that week, I want to say our first one was 5 o'clock. We got together, and people all over the nation kneeled together. Some people went live, some people prayed, some people literally just kind of meditated and reflected on what are the things that I want to do in my circle of influence, so that when I stand back up after this 9 minutes, I'm going to put these things into action. So there's 3 things that this is our way of protesting. The 3 things that we're protesting for, number 1 is for accountability. Now, I'm absolutely a proponent of policing, of good policing. Something crazy would happen right now, I'm calling the police. But I also want those officers that abuse their authority to be held accountable for that. So that's the first thing we want, accountability. The second thing is exactly what's happening right here, having conversations with my white brothers and sisters on how can we collectively make a difference. That's the second thing that we're protesting for and bringing attention to. And the third thing is help with better education, specifically in African American history. We feel like so much of where we are right now and what we're dealing with is because a majority of us have been taught a history that's not totally true or accurate. A lot of holes have been left. A lot of stories have not been told. A lot of people did not grow up seeing African Americans specifically in positive light. So you can't help but grow up feeling a certain way when you come across certain people. If all I've ever been shown is that I can be successful as a black man, either being an entertainer, a musician, or an athlete, and I'm missing all the other opportunities. So Kneel for 9 was something that we sent out. We started a Facebook page. Feel free that you can find us, literally Kneel for 9 on Facebook. And what we're doing this coming Saturday is the same thing. At 2:30 p.m., we're getting together with friends, with family. Some people are doing it by themselves. And we're going to be kneeling at 2:30 wherever we are for 9 minutes. But this time it's dedicating 1 minute to each of 9 specific people. And we've been listing names like Joel Acevedo, listing names like Sandra Bland, Eric Garner. And these are people that you should, if you don't know about, definitely look into. People who have not received justice to this day. If you're aware of the Breonna Taylor, this lady was on the front lines of the coronavirus fight as a nurse who was shot and killed in her home because police entered the wrong apartment. And she was shot and killed. No one's been held accountable for that. And this has been almost 3 months now. So it's things like this we want to keep bringing attention to. And we want to invite you to be a part of that, if you will. That can be at your house, it can be anywhere. Just to take a knee with us at 2:30 for 9 minutes. This is something that we've been doing for about 2 months now, since the beginning of June. I also want you to know that if my organization can be of any help to you at all, of having more of these conversations or even just asking questions. We have people that inbox us and just, Jay, I got a question, I hope this doesn't offend you. It won't. Because if you don't ask and you don't have a safe place to ask, how can you ever know? How can you ever find out? Why do black people do, please ask me. I may have a question of why do white people do? And you can educate me. But that's the reality. That's how we build these relationships. So again, my organization is Plain English. Feel free to look us up. Absolutely would love to have you connect with us. And if there's any way we can be of service to you, please know that we're here to serve you.
Ruth is going to give us details.
So if any of you want to do the Kneel for 9 protest with a group, there's going to be a group of us at Brookfield Square this Saturday. We're going to meet at the corner of Blue Mountain and Moreland. We're going to line the sidewalk there. So I would love to see if all of you could make it. That'd be awesome. Yeah. So we're going to gather starting at 2:10, and then from 2:10 to 2:20, if you can be there, and then we'll take a few minutes just to explain what we're doing. And from 2:30 to 2:39, we're going to kneel together.
Yeah, and that's going to be on the Brookfield Square side, so that's the southwest corner of Moreland and Blue Mound. That'll be at 2:30. So, Robert, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just.
I'm gonna ask you to close us in prayer then afterwards.
Yeah, no problem. I know we're really getting up on the time frame here, so I want to keep this short. But I was thinking about and reflecting about what you asked me, like if I had the opportunity to say something, what would I want to say? And just really briefly, I want to talk about and really deconstruct the concept of racism. And I understand that we all have a general understanding of it. But I've heard racism described as something of the past. I've heard it described as like a cultural thing or something specific to environments. But as Christians, I think we need to understand that racism inherently is sinful. It is someone that is made in the image of God telling someone else who is also made in the image of God that I am worth more than you, that my life is worth more than you, and that you don't matter as much as I do. That by very definition of sinful. And think about it. If you and I both call ourselves Christians, that means that we both have faith in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If our lives are worth different value, then his death couldn't redeem the both of us. One of us is lying, right? Racism inherently is sinful, and so what I want to convey is that there are different manifestations behind a racist heart, as we've seen throughout the course of American history, with the institution of slavery, with sharecropping, with Jim Crow laws, and with, thank God all those things have ended, but the same heart and the same mindset, and essentially the same influence of the evil one, of the enemy, has been behind them all. but racism has not ended. And so understanding that it's still here and that it's a sin as the church, I think the one thing that I would want to encourage people is to, in whatever way that God moves you to, in whatever way that he encourages you to, stand against it, oppose it. And whatever you do, don't be complacent to it. It is not glorifying to God, and as his people, we have the responsibility to stand against it.
So I want to say thank you again. Man, I have so many questions. You guys prepared for these questions, and we only got to like half of them, but this has been great, and I just want to say all the best to all of you. You can look Jay up on Plain English, Milwaukee Declaration. You can read what Robert put up there, and definitely Northbrook Church, November. You can listen to Ashley's sermon. So, Robert, why don't you close us all in prayer?
I'd love to. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for your mercies are new every morning, and Lord, you are just so good to us in ways that we don't even imagine, that we don't even realize in a lot of ways. Lord, thank you for such beautiful weather for this. That alone is a blessing, Lord. But Lord, I just thank you for every person here. Father, I thank you for their willing heart to come and listen, Father, and oh Lord, we need you. We need you right here. We need you in this parking lot. We need you in our relationships and our conversations. We need you in this world. We desperately need you in this world. And Lord, I just ask that you would speak to every person here and equip every person here. Lord, if there's something that some of us are maybe wrestling with, I ask that you would reveal what needs to be revealed. And Father, as we continue to navigate this task of living together and coexisting, I just ask that your grace and that your mercy would overcome us all, and that in you and that in all things and in all aspects and in all areas and revenues and possibilities, that your name and your name alone would be glorified, and that your people would reflect your heart, that they would see us and see you, that they would hear us and hear your words. Father, I just ask that you would help equip us all to continue to be your ambassadors and reflect the things that you need to be reflected, and reflect the things that need to be reflected in you, Father. I pray for safe travels for everyone as they return home. And Lord, we literally need you every second of every hour. And so I just pray your presence over everyone here and throughout and your church throughout this city, our state, the nation, and this world. Until you return or until we go to see you. Father, we love you and we magnify you today. In the holy, precious name of Jesus, the living Christ, I've prayed. And let everyone say,
Amen. Amen. Thanks again. Hey, feel free to come up and say hi to one of these guys. Don't shake their hands, but give them an elbow bump or something like that. Good night, everybody.